Open heart, open mind. Welcome to the Sattva channel, the official dialogue platform of the Sattva project. Namaste to all Dhamma friends and fellow Sattvas. My name is Sherab Wong, the co-founder of the Sattva project. So we are going to have a very interesting dialogue today entitled Saddharma and Saddhamma, Sanskrit and Pali Buddhism in dialogue. But before we begin, let's see what is going to happen in future on the 5th and 6th of March 2021. There will be an International Buddhist Conference with the title of Tishika or Tishiksha, the three trainings in Pali and Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism. This is a dialogue among Buddhist teachers and scholars of the Pali and Sanskrit traditions to discuss and share their experience in the three trainings, namely Tishiksha in Sanskrit or Tisika in Pali, on how the Buddha taught us to manage and train our minds to have a peaceful and happy life and leading towards liberation or enlightenment. So this very meaningful Buddhist conference will be the Solemn Dalai will be giving the inaugural address in this forum, joined by other venerable and scholars. So next, for you all to register, there are two QR codes here. First is QR code for the monastic sangha, and the second one will be the QR code for the lay audience. So before we begin today's dialogue, let me introduce you to the moderator of today's dialogue, Dr. Christie Chang.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, Dr. Christie Chang is the advisor and event director and dialogue coordinator of the Sattva project. He is a joint president of International Buddhist Confederation from 2017 until now. And he's also the president of Sakya Taiwan from the year 2012 until now. And he was the chair steering committee for International Lay Buddhist Forum from 2014 until 2019. And he was also the president of the Sakya International Association of Buddhist Women from 2009 until 2013. He was also the president of Hawaii East-West Center Taipei Chapter 2015 until 2017. He was also Director Council of International Education Exchange, CIEE Taipei 2001 until 2020. And he has a PhD in linguistics from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So welcome to the Christie Chang.
Thank you, Brother Sherab. And I'm a student today, actually. Well, before I introduce Sherab, my co-host and the co-founder of the Sattva project, let me not forget to thank our very kind sponsor, Dream Homes, and also Durian FM and Durian ASEAN stations. Thank you for your very kind support for the Sattva project. And also, let me not forget to introduce Brother Chang, our technical support from behind. There's Brother Chang.
Hi, everyone.
Brother Chang is a broadcast director of the Sattva channel. Thank you very much, Brother Chang.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Chang. All right, so next, I would like to also introduce our brother Sherab Wong, who's the co-founder of the Sattva project. I like to call him the S of the two S of the Sattva project. The other, co-founder is my sister, Sonia Gomes. And Sherab is also the founder of the Vajra Link. So the Chinese name of Brother Sherab is Wang Zhenwei. He's preferred to be called as Sherab, his Tibetan name meaning wisdom. And he's a freelance writer, speaker, and translator. He has been working and translating for many spiritual teachers in various talks, retreats, seminars, and workshops since 1990s. He shares his experiences and knowledge on various schools of Tibetan Buddhism, Zen, synchronicity, and basic principles in spirituality, as well as creative visualization through his meditation and spiritual workshops. And Brother Sherab is also a student and enthusiast of Eastern and Western metaphysics. All right. So next, we have many wonderful guests today. Let me introduce the first three monastic guests, our venerables. first, and Brother Sherab will introduce the other two, scholars. Our first monastic speaker, I'm waiting for the PowerPoint, will be Venerable Rongdao. Venerable Rongdao was actually born and raised in Malaysia, although she's right now not based in Malaysia. Good morning, Venerable. She's now in Montreal, Canada. So Venerable Rongdao was ordained in the Chinese Mahayana tradition. Currently, she's the assistant professor of religious studies and East Asian studies at McGill University, Canada. Her academic work focuses on changing landscape in Chinese Buddhism and identity production in the 20th century. She writes about Buddhist education, citizenship discourse, lineage networks, transnational movements, and monastic economy in modern Chinese Buddhism. So welcome, Venerable. Good morning. And our second guest is Venerable, we call him Ven Dharmapala. So Ven was born in Kuching, East Malaysia, and was ordained as a bhikkhu in 1994. He spent about almost 20 years in studying Buddhist philosophy, Pali, and Sanskrit literatures in Sri Lanka and Hong Kong. In 2009, he obtained his doctoral degree, PhD in Buddhist studies in the University of Hong Kong. After his graduation, he was appointed as chief editor and spiritual director for the Buddhist Store website, which is one of the oldest and largest Buddhist websites in the world. Ven returned to Malaysia in December 2013 and was invited by several Buddhist academic institutions and societies for teaching mission and Dhamma missionary works. Ven was a lecturer at the Malaysian Buddhist Academy, Kuala Lumpur, and a lecturer at Buddhist and Pali University degree course conducted at Brickfield, Malaysia, Mahavihara, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Currently, he's the founder and abbot of Brahma Vihara Monastery and Retreat Center in Malacca, a beautiful center which I had the great fortune of visiting 2 years ago. And Ven is also the abbot of Bodhivana Monastery in Shanghai, Pelek, and abbot of the Center of Mindfulness in Hong Kong, and the course director of Theravada Academy, established in Brahma Vihara Monastery and Retreat Center. Very active. Welcome, Ven. Thank you for joining us within your very busy schedule. And our next monastic speaker is Geshe Yonten. So Geshe was born in Zanskar, a remote part of northern India that is historically and ethnically Tibetan. At the age of 10, Geshe chose to become a monk, joining the local monastery and studying there for 5 years. Upon completing the exams at his local monastery, he traveled to South India to begin the 26-year program of scholarly study to become a Larompa Geshe at Drupang Gomang Monastery. This degree is the highest monastic degree in the Gelug School of Buddhism. During these 26 years, Geshe was tested on his knowledge of Buddhist philosophy in front of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So Geshe Yonten is a member of a small group of monks selected by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to study English, Western philosophy, and science so that he may teach, collaborate, and study with scientists, philosophers, educators, and others across the world. Geshe Yonten is specially appointed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to be Tibetan Buddhist Center Resident Director. And in Singapore, Geshe is based. Welcome, Tashidele Geshe. So Brother Sherab will introduce our scholar speakers. Brother Sherab, I think you're muted.
Yeah, let me introduce Dr. Mattia Salvini. Dr. Mattia is also the advisor of our Sattva project. He obtained a BA and MA Sanskrit from RKM Vivekananda College, Chennai, India, and a PhD in Buddhist Studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies, London. He was also a part of the 2 research projects in Vastu Sastra, I think equivalent to Indian Feng Shui, right? In teams headed by Professor Adam Hardy in Cardiff University. His main research interests are Buddhist philosophy as expressed in Sanskrit, and especially Madhyamika, and the relationship between philosophy and Vyakarana, the relationship between Madhyamika, Yogacara, and non-Mahayana Abhidharma, Buddhist sutras in Sanskrit and Tibetan, Vastu Sastra again, and Buddhist Kavya. Mattia has taught in Nepal in Rangjung Geshe Institute, Thailand, Mahidol University, and as visiting professor in Taiwan in Huafan Daxue, Huafan University, and Germany, Hamburg University as a Numata visiting professor, and has offered occasionally lectures and reading sessions in UK, Oxford University, Malaysia, in Tanshan Temple, Brickfields Mahavihara, and my BA, and also in Japan, Kyoto University, India, Ashoka University, Delhi University, and mainland China. Welcome, Dr. Mattia. And next, I would like to introduce Bibek Prasad Sharma. Bibek was born in Nepal, finished his BA, Buddhist studies in International Buddhist College, IBC, Thailand. Further, he completed his MA Buddhist studies in Fo-Kwang University, Taiwan, where he learned classical Buddhist Chinese and translated a correspondence between Kumarajiva and Hui Yuan to complete his MA thesis. For his PhD, he joined Mahidol University, where he is currently working on Yashomitra's Abhidharma Kosha Vyakya, a sub-commentary on the Abhidharma Kosha Bhasha, to complete his PhD thesis. Currently, he is translating the first chapter of Abhidharma Kosha as translated by Xuan Zhuang for BDK Japan. He reads Chinese, Sanskrit, Pali, Hindi, and French, apart from his own mother tongue, Nepali. Welcome, Bibek. Okay, so let's start our dialogue now. Dr. Christie? You need to unmute yourself, Christie. Yeah. Christie, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah. Christie, you need to unmute yourself.
All right. I'm back.
No. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm sure that the audience saw the topic of our dialogue, and they might be wondering, what does that mean? Saddharma and Saddhamma. And that actually is a result of a conversation between Brother Sherab and Dr. Mattia. So maybe let's start from that. What does that mean? Saddharma. So please help us, answer our audience.
Yes, Dr. Mattia, what do you mean by Saddharma or Saddhamma, actually? Because when the first time I heard about the word Sad is, the very famous Hindu teacher by the name of Sadguru, But if you pronounce it incorrectly, the SAD becomes sad, So in my opinion, if there's no dialogue or conversation between Pali and Sanskrit tradition, it will not become a Saddhamma or Saddhamma. It becomes a very sad Dharma or Saddhamma. So, Dr. Mattia, what do you mean by Saddhamma or Saddharma, actually?
Well, I don't mean anything sad, so don't worry about it. I thought of picking up these 2 words because these would be the 2 words that mostly are used to refer to Buddhism. So it is, while the word dharma might be more common also with non-Buddhist traditions, when one uses Saddharma, then it becomes more specifically Buddhist. And Saddharma can be understood in 2 slightly different ways. Of course, here it refers to the teachings of the Buddha. The word dharma itself can have many, many different meanings, maybe about 20, just in the Buddhist tradition. but let's say it means the teachings of a Buddha. And then the word Sat can be understood in two different ways, because this is a compound. So one way to understand it is that it is the dharma of good people, Satam Dharma. The other way of understanding it is that it is the good or holy dharma. So San and Dharma. The second one is the basis for example, the Tibetan rendering Damche. So when it is understood Sat as a synonym of Pavitra, something holy, or then it is understood as the holy Dharma. And that's why you can see that when this word is translated from the Tibetan, Damche, normally it is translated as the sacred Dharma or the holy Dharma. But in the Sanskrit, it has these two different possible meanings, which are both embedded in this expression. And this is also basically how we can understand the Pali. Usually, the grammar of Pali is understood according to the conventions of Sanskrit grammar. It's exactly the same in that respect. So, as you can see, the difference between these two words in terms of sound is very small. It's just one is dharma and one is dhamma. And this reflects the fact that, strictly speaking, Pali and Sanskrit are not really two different languages, we could say. It would be better to understand them as two registers of the same language, two different ways of regularizing grammar. And Pali and Sanskrit are actually mutually comprehensible. If somebody speaks in Pali and somebody speaks in Sanskrit, if the two people talk to each other, they will understand most of what each other is saying. Therefore, they would qualify, in a sense, as being either two different registers of the same language or as dialects. So I have noticed that His Holiness the Dalai Lama quite often speaks of these two traditions, the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition, and I think there is good reasons to speak of these two traditions as a simple way of classifying the Buddhism which is now available in this world. So my thinking was that by just starting from these two terms, we could slowly explore how these two languages relate to the Buddhism which is now available in the world, and also how the Pali and Sanskrit traditions relate to each other, because actually they are rather closely related. So this was basically the idea, also trying to make the title a bit short. That was the other reason to suggest this.
Thank you for the explanation. So yeah, maybe we can now start having our guest speakers to join to introduce to us what do you think is the Saddharma or Saddhamma from your respective tradition, from the tradition you practice. So may I invite Venerable Dharmapala next to me to speak first, Pandey?
Okay, so if you look at this word Saddharma, of course I make it short. Literally, it means the true Dhamma. Yeah, so it's a true Dhamma by the Buddha himself. And of course, when you talk about the true Dhamma, it refers to the Four Noble Truths, and the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree, the Four Noble Truths, and then the Noble Eightfold Path is a path, right? So the Buddha followed the Noble Eightfold Path. Finally he realized the Nibbana. So the whole of the Buddha's practice and the cultivation is none other than Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. So that can be, shortly, succinctly summarized under the Saddharma. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pandey. Yeah, may I invite, our, Geshe to speak now?
Thank you so much, all the respected speaker. I really appreciate Dr. Mattia to explain the meaning of Dharma, but I still cannot see the connection between Dharma and Saddharma can link with the Sanskrit and Pali. Number one. Number two, when we say Dharma is a general term for all phenomena, we can use as a dharma, mean all phenomena has the unique characteristic. Two things look very similar, 100% look similar. If you look very closely, the two looks very similar, but it has their own, unique nature. This means the general meaning of dharma. Second meaning of dharma we name, transformation. So when it's linked with the transformation, then it's become more like a Buddha Dharma. Buddha Dharma. So I want to request to Dr. Mattia, can you explain more how you can link Saddharma and Saddhamma, link with the Pali and Sanskrit? My understanding, the Pali is the general, the ancient Indian language. Sanskrit is more, have a more meaning, more vast and deeper language. But the two language has an connection, there's a deep connections.
Yeah. Thank you.
I
Thank you for your question. Yeah. I think shall we have everyone to speak one term, and then we come back to Dr. Mattia for that answer for Geshe-la's question. Thank you. Yeah. So can we invite Venerable Rongdao to speak a little bit about this Saddhamma and Saddharma?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation, and it's wonderful to be in such auspicious company. So sort of like taking it maybe, away from the conversation on the relationship between Sanskrit and Pali a little bit, if you would allow me. In my tradition, of course, this idea of Saddhamma being true Dharma is certainly there. But then the translation for Saddhamma, since Kumarajiva, which has been, of course, in very, very popular use throughout the tradition today, is this idea of it being profound, marvelous, and sometimes even translated as magnificent. So I think that the notion that translation decision conveyed is that there's this perfect or non-contradiction between the ultimate reality and conventional reality, which I think philosophically, really serve as the cornerstone within, the Chinese Mahayana understanding of this notion of the true Dharma or Saddharma.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable. Yes, it's truly, when I Google Saddharma, what I got is this, the Lotus Sutra, the title for the Lotus Sutra.
Exactly. That's the title of one of the most important sutra in the entire East Asia, I would say.
Yes, thank you. Yes, can we now go to
Bibek?
Dr. Bibek? Yeah.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting me in this talk show. I think today is a very auspicious day, extremely auspicious. It's a full moon, and there are many other events that happened today, including the miracles displayed by the Buddha. So I hope and I aspire that this talk will foster the more mutual understanding and cooperation and so on and so forth between Pali and Sanskrit tradition, and then there is a need for that. Now, talking about the Saddharma, since our Sherab talked about Sadguru, so that brought me squarely to the Indian spiritual scene when the Buddha arrived. So the word dharma is not unique to the Buddha. It was already used by other traditions, especially the Brahminical tradition. So when the Buddha came, he, in a way, he gave a lot of reinterpretation of the terms and the vocabularies that was already in vogue at that time. And one of the word, of course, and the central word was dharma. Just like for the Chinese tradition, that it is a kind of a discussion on the Tao, right? The way, which way is the best way, right? And in the Indian tradition, it is about the dharma. So what is the dharma? How we define this dharma, you know? And I think the that qualification gives a special meaning to the dharma. And since Dr. Mattia has already given the nirukti of the dharma according to Buddhism, I would just highlight one thing, that there were many theories, and there were many casual theories in India, in the Brahminical darsana system and other non-Brahminical Shramana system, you know. And Buddha came and he taught one profound dharma, and that was related with the pratitya samutpada. So, in my opinion, and then since the context of the Chinese was also brought up, and I think Kumarajiva Chumulusha quite rightly understood the meaning, and then he translated the Saddharma as a miaofa rather than changfa, right? So, and the meaning goes towards the direction that it's a profound dharma that only the Buddhas can explore, only the Buddhas can discover and give it to the world, and that is the pratitya samutpada. So it is a unique dharma in that sense. It is a true dharma, and it is the best of the dharma. So within the Indian tradition, that is how we can distinguish between the mithya drishtis, different types of wrong views about the reality of the dharmas, and the Buddha dharma. Because it is only in the Buddha dharma that we find that all the dharmas are pratitya samutpanna, they are dependently origin. And because of that, they are profound in terms of their nature, right? And so, in that sense, it is a Saddharma. That's how, well, our esteemed speakers have already covered other areas, but I was just touching the Indian background in which the Saddharma within the Buddhist tradition plays the role. And that's how I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bibek. Yes, and can we come back to Dr. Mattia? You can answer, Geshe-la's question.
Sure. I hope I understood. I think Geshe would like to know a little bit more how the Sanskrit etymology relates to the meanings that he has himself brought up, and also to the meaning in the context of Saddharma. So let me explain a little bit. The term dharma itself comes from the root dhrun, and this root is used in these cases in the sense of holding or having, dharani. So for example, if we are referring to the specific and common characteristics of things, then swalakshana dharana dharma. It is called dharma because it has or holds its specific characteristics. So this is the kind of explanation that we find in the Abhidharma. Generally speaking, this doesn't seem to be the explanation that we get when we're referring to Saddharma, where it primarily refers to the teachings, although this meaning can be found when we take the first of the two analyses I was referring to. So I was saying that we have these two compound analyses, and these two compound analyses of the word Saddharma can be found, for example, in the last chapter of the Prasannapada of Chandrakirti. So Chandrakirti gives two options after verse 30 of the last chapter of the Prasannapada, the clear word commentary on the Mula Madhyama Karika of Nagarjuna. One option is that it is called Saddharma because it is the dharma of the Satam, which means Aryanam. So the dharma of the Aryas is the Saddharma, where San and Arya means are synonyms in this case. The other option, the second option he gives is, or it is Shobhanaha Dharmaha, which means Shobhana means something like beautiful or good. Why is it called beautiful or good? Because it is worthy of being praised, since it causes the destruction of the entirety of the suffering of samsara. So this is the basis for these two explanations. It is actually, in this case, one of them actually appears twice in the Prasannapada. It also appears in chapter 24, which is the Satya Pariksha. So there we get the first of the two explanations, because the context, as Geshe knows very well, is the relationship between the Arya Satyas and the existence of the Dharma itself. And therefore, that explanation becomes important. But in the last chapter of the Prasannapada, we also find the second explanation, which happens to be closer to how normally we understand the word, and also seems to be the basis for the translation in both Tibetan and, as far as I can understand, in Chinese. So I hope that this was connected to the question of Geshe.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that answered. Venerable Rongdao, please.
Thank you, Christie. Sorry for kind of trying to do your job as well. I just would like to
Please.
ask a follow-up question to this round of discussion. I think this is really incredible that we get to hear from, I think, every tradition when it comes to how the term Satthamma is defined, and what does it really mean to it within each tradition. I'd like to perhaps expand that question to our very venerable guest, especially to what does Satthamma itself mean to each of us personally in our practice of the Dharma, in applying the Buddha Dharma in our daily life, because again, I mean, Buddhism is a living tradition, because it continues to be defined and redefined, interpreted and reinterpreted, and to me, that speaks to its relevance from the 6th century BCE to the 21st century, right? So to kind of expand on that question a little bit, Christie, if I may,
please.
I personally, would love to know and to be enlightened by the various response to that. Thank you.
Yeah, great, wonderful question. So may I invite maybe our Geshe first?
Thank you so much. Let me speak about the Venerable Rongdao talking about. Actually, the Buddhism, so I explained, is like a Buddha Dharma. The Dharma means the truth, the reality. The truth of the reality will always be reality. So like before the 600 BC until now, it can be truth for forever. Therefore, when we follow the truth, so when we realize the truth, the reality, then our life can become meaningful and truthful. So why we have a lot of misunderstanding, misperception? Because whether you are Buddhist or non-Buddhist, all the misperception, misunderstanding we have, because we don't, in our daily life, we don't try to realize the reality. Sometimes we go, beyond the reality, we call exaggerate the reality. Sometimes we minus the reality. Therefore, the people who follow the truth and reality, the person always be truthful. The person has a less misunderstanding and misperception. Therefore, the Buddha teaching, actually, all the Buddha teaching, taught by Buddha, for example, Four Noble Truth, impermanence, so and so, those are just discovered, realized by Buddha. It's not the Buddha's, invents. It's not he really have a new concept. He just realized the truth and delivered the truth to others. Therefore, Buddhism is, it doesn't mean we are Buddhist. Buddhism is very good. I'm not saying this. The person who follow the truth, the person become truthful, the person always have a less misperception. And also, so we are talking about the true tradition, like a Pali or Sanskrit, Dharma or Dhamma. So when you look at the contents, the practice between these two traditions, we all together practice the Four Noble Truth as a foundation. The Four Noble Truth actually lay on the three things. Buddha said when he was looking around the rice field, Buddha said, whoever sees Dharma will see Buddha. Then later, Sherab asked question to Avalokiteshvara, what does mean Dharma? How the person can see the Dharma? The answer was, the person who sees, who realize the dependent origination, then the person can see the Dharma, the truth, the reality. The person who sees the truth and reality, the person totally free from the misperception. The person totally free from misperception, the person always have a peaceful mind. There's no any more, destruction, the inner destruction. Even though there are a lot of the externally destruction, for example, natural disaster, global warming, it doesn't affect the inner peace because the person always see the truth and reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe. Yeah, so what about Bande? Bande, would you like to answer this question? What does Saddhamma mean to each of us in the 21st century?
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, you see, the Buddha's teaching is all about the path to Nibbana. You see, so to me, the Saddhamma here refer to the path. So we have to start from where we are, you see, then go along the path and to, and to reach and to realize the Nibbana. So here the Saddhamma, I will refer to the path, and we have several paths as we go along. You see, so we have like I think in both tradition, Pali tradition, we talk about the path of requisites. It is a path where we accumulate our merits. You see, and of course, to a beginner, we will tell them that okay, when you do good, you will go to the heaven. So as we continue the path, and we will go to the path of cultivation, where the samatha and vipassanas comes in. You see, so you are very serious. You see, when you talk about the preparatory effort, you are really putting an effort, doubling effort. You see, for your seeing the Four Noble Truth. You see, so and there is also a path of seeing. It means that the direct comprehension of the Four Noble Truths, seeing face by face. And of course, once you become an enlightened, you see, we still have to continue, cultivating the path. There is the path of cultivation where you have still, subtle defilements, you see, have to continue to be eradicated. And finally, you will reach to the path of non-training, you see. So this is a Saddharma. It is about the practice. It is about that we have goal, we follow this path and end the suffering. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bande. Yes, before I go on, we have very positive feedback from our audience already. I heard that there are more than 60 live viewers right now. So we would like to also encourage our audience, live audience, to ask questions so that we become more interactive as well. Okay. All right. So let me go on to Dr. Bibek. Would you like to answer this question just raised?
Thank you. I think whether it is 21st century or it was at the time of the Buddha or any time, our basic need is that we want to be happy. We all want to be happy at any given point of our life. And but we don't know how to be happy, right? What is the hindrance of that happiness? How to achieve that happiness? We actually do not know. So, and especially now, we are still in the midst of COVID, what it has done to us, the whole humanity, and that is not the only thing. In each century, humanity had to face something disastrous. There are natural calamities, more and more natural calamities. People's life are becoming more difficult, right? More in terms of their engagement, in terms of the emotional state, and so on and so forth. So I think the need to be happy and remain happy is the basic need of not only human beings, according to Buddhism, but for all sentient beings. But we don't know how to become happy. So one of the most important contribution of Buddhism is that if we practice this dharma, we can become happy. Now, it might sound like some Ashtalaukika dharma, the worldly dharmas I'm talking about. I think in Buddhism, in any proper path, there are two aspects, right? One is Abhyudaya and one is Nisreyasa. So the Abhyudaya is something like we start to go towards a happy state, even within the three dhatu. We go towards a happy state. We find a way to be born in a state where we will be happy. We have prosperity, we have good health, and so on and so forth. That is one aspect of the path, and that is easily achieved by practicing some of the basic precepts, like the sila, what we call, right? And then, if someone wants to be more happy, just like Adanta sometimes said, that if you leave a little bit, if you let go a little bit, you will be a little bit happy. If you let go a lot, you will be a lot happier. And if you want to be completely happy, because nirvana is also supposed to be the shanta, one of the very blissful state. So if you want to achieve that nirvana, then you have to let go of everything. However, we don't know how to let go of the things. So the Buddhist path and the teachings can offer that technology so that any person in any given state can simply be happy and kind of maintain his equipoise, right? That's why there is a stock phrase in the sutra, which is very beautiful, I think. It says, what is the qualities of the teachings of the Buddha? And it says, Ado Kalyanam, Madhya Kalyanam, Paryavasani Kalyanam. That means it is good, it is it is auspicious, it is good, it's beneficial at the beginning. So if someone maintains some precepts, some of the good conduct, right, then he will start to become happy, he will accumulate some merit, and that will be the cause for the happiness for the future states. And if someone goes towards even practicing dhyana, samapattis, more mind training, then madhya kalyana. So if someone is in the middle of the path, that person will be happy in the middle of the path too. And if someone persists and goes towards the end of the path, and then he achieves the full nirvana. So I think the beauty of the Buddha's teaching is that it helps to it is beneficial at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, at any given point of the path. So that's how I understand the teachings of the Buddha.
Thank you, Dr. Bibek. Now, to Dr. Mattia, after having offered your explanation academically, what does that mean to you personally? I think that's Venerable Rongdao's question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you personally?
Yeah. Actually, I think, well, first I would like to say I am in the 26th century. That's not 21st, 26th. That's my century.
Okay.
But I hope that what Saddharma means to me has nothing to do with the century, because if a dharma has value, it's also because it's akalika, it's timeless, it's beyond time. That is one of its very important features. And since the question is, what does Saddharma mean to me personally? It's quite simple. Saddharma is one of my refuges. There are 3 refuges, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so the Dharma is one of my 3 refuges. So I have a commitment to the Buddhist teachings in this life and hopefully for many lifetimes. And that's what it means to me. It means a commitment to practice. That is the meaning of Saddharma for me. And I'm using the word Saddharma specifically because different people have different predilections. My own predilection is for Sanskrit, and therefore my practice is connected primarily to Sanskrit, like also my teacher did, and even my Tibetan teachers often taught me by using Sanskrit words. And therefore, if it is more specifically about the word Saddharma in Sanskrit, I could add this. But the basic point, what does Saddharma mean to me? Refuge. That's just very clear to me that is the main point for me, for my own personal relationship to Saddharma. Thank you.
Thank you. And Venerable Rongdao. Oh, okay.
Now, I would like to extend from Venerable Rongdao's question.
All right.
I think we all the venerables and the scholars has explained what do you mean by Saddharma, or the experience of living Dharma according to so-called Buddhist tradition, religiously and academically. But I think maybe Venerable Rongdao would like to ask your individual direct experience, without much jargons from the academic perspective or religiously
That was what I was going to ask Venerable Rongdao.
I think maybe that is your question, Venerable Rongdao.
Yeah.
Originally,
I thought by asking the question, I wouldn't have to answer it myself.
It comes back to you.
The reason why I asked the question was because as I understood the event or the reason why we were here together was so that we can engage in certain, I think, intra-tradition or intra-tradition or intra-Buddhism dialogues. And then, of course, very often that would become, or at least I hope that would become the basis for certain religious dialogues as well, and that was why I came up with that question. I think we each of us would have already, I assume, and sorry for assuming, very firm conviction in terms of how we relate to the individual traditions that we are practicing or we're committing, or for a lot of our venerable speakers, the tradition that they preach, right? And yet we are constantly on a daily basis engaged with not just our brothers and sisters, fellow travelers on this path, to use Venerable Dharmapala's words, on a daily basis, but we're also, every single day rubbing shoulders with people who might seem, at least superficially, traveling on seemingly different paths. And so in other words, as true or profound or correct as Saddharma or the Buddha Dharma is, how do we live in this diversity that I just described? With that, I'd say, really incredible privilege of having encountered this Saddharma. That was the question. But again, I mean, I enjoyed every single response. And I don't mean to steal your job, Christie and Sherab.
No, thank you for that wonderful question. So, anything to add?
Maybe I would like to ask all the venerables and the scholars, like, can you please use one word without any jargons, religiously or Buddhistically, express your view or experience on what is living Saddharma for you, or Saddhamma for you? I mean, yeah.
Venerable Rongdao.
Usually, when you have a very difficult question, you want to make sure that you're the first one to answer, so that the answers, right? I mean, the most obvious answers come up right first.
Yeah.
To me, if I have to use one word to describe, at least my very superficial understanding of Saddharma, that would be interconnection or interconnectedness. Call it Patitya Samutpada, call it yuan qi, call it whatever in your tradition or in the language that you're familiar with. We are, to use a layman term, we're in this together, and I think that is especially relevant for the time that we are living in and going through right now. That we're in this together.
Thank you, Venerable
That's
Rongdao.
good.
That's good. How about
Anyone
let's say
next?
from Geshe?
Based on my experience about not just follow the Dharma, applying the Dharma, I will tell you a few experience. When I was, I think, 19 years old, my father passed away. I was very, very unhappy for few months because I just studied Dharma. I don't really apply the Dharma in my daily life. The second time, my mother passed away. I'm more close to my mother than my father, because my father was very short-tempered. But actually, when mother passed away, I could be more sad, became more unhappiness. That time when I received the news, my mother passed away, I feel bit upset. Suddenly, then I remember all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, subject to change. Nobody can stop the death. Then suddenly I able to overcome the sadness and the loneliness. Number one. Number two, I'm not saying in front of you, I'm very high practitioner. Since I really apply the Dharma in my daily life, more than, I think, let's say 15 years, I haven't really got very angry, very disappointment, very easy to adjust our mind. So therefore, the Buddha teaching, the Dharma, is look like exactly the painkiller, the medicine. When you eat the medicine, sooner or later, the sickness is going to be disappeared. Also, due to having calm mind, due to having not a lot of negative, disturbing mind, I guess, I'm not really sick for more than 15 years. I've been in Singapore for more than 8 years. Only one time, I got some kind of sore throat. I went to hospital only one time, take simple medicine. So for the 8 years, I don't have a really, sickness. I didn't really sick. So that's why the Dharma we apply for every daily life, every moment, is really reduce the emotional problems. This day, due to the pandemic time, the COVID-19, so many people facing emotional problems. So as a people who has a Dharma, I'm not talking about Dharma knowledge, have a knowledge, apply the knowledge in our daily life is really bring a lot of benefit for ourselves. If you be happy, then the people, the friends who live around you, they also able to be happy. So this is, I make sure I'm not saying you I'm very high practitioner or I have a lot of kind of thing. No. So this is that's my experience. Dharma is really, we can, frankly speaking, Dharma is very useful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Dr. Mattia?
Yes, I was thinking, I'm not sure I understood the question correctly, because I thought I used some kind of simple idea, which is refuge. And I find it very difficult to explain about my experience of Buddhist practice without referring to refuge. For me, that is the foundation of everything else. So even anything else that might happen regarding developing calm mind or anything, in the end, I think it is connected back to having clarity about refuge. And this comes, in my understanding, mostly from developing the wish to get out of samsara. Basically understanding that whichever situation one might find oneself in, it's not really very satisfactory, and one cannot find satisfaction in it. One has to find something different, namely a refuge. So I think personally that as long as, in my own experience at least, apart from anything else that might come on top of that, but this is what really makes a difference. If refuge is clear, then everything else can fall into place and develop almost naturally. If refuge is not very clear, then I think that even if we do other things, at least in my experience, It's like everything is shaky and doesn't give very good results. So I'm sorry if it sounds like jargon, but for me, the experience
I'm sorry,
of
Dr. Metru, I'm sorry, I interrupt you.
No problem.
So actually, according to your idea, the taking refuge is first is a very important. Then all the practices we follow. Is it?
Well, I think that any further practice that one may do makes better sense and will give its result if we take refuge clearly. Without taking refuge clearly, I don't think that the other practices will give much result.
May I raise a question?
Yeah.
A non-Buddhist, totally, even though non-believer who don't have any religion background, the person who practice great compassion, great love, impermanence, they can get, some benefits as the person who take refuge, or cannot get same benefit.
I think some will be same and some will not be same.
Yeah.
Can I jump in for a while? Maybe I rephrase Geshe's last question as, can one become a Buddha without first becoming a Buddhist? Can a non-Buddhist become enlightened?
Yeah, without taking refuge.
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Unless it's a Pratyeka Buddha.
Yeah.
No,
so how about Bibek?
Impossible.
Okay. If Dharma is universal, then maybe the next question is why not?
Should I keep answering it? I can answer.
Why not?
No problem.
Yeah. Anyone can answer. I mean, just a general question.
Also, according to your perspective, the Buddha Shakyamuni, so we believe he became a Buddha. So, did he really take refuge into Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha?
Yes. Yes.
So,
of course.
Right? Then so are all of you going to agree?
So this is a very interesting dialogue.
To add on to Geshe question.
Hey, Ven Rongdao. Okay.
Yes, please.
So then we are at the same time claiming that the Dharma is universal, and yet you have to practice the Dharma a particular way, a specific way.
Like condition.
It's
this way. The Buddhist way.
Right? There seems to be then this tension between universality and particularity. That the Dharma is, well, my favorite joke to my students in class is that, sometimes they say, you know what if I just don't believe in karma? I just don't, right? And then very calmly, this is how I usually performed it. Very calmly, I would say, you still get reborn. You see, so I think what I was trying to get at, from maybe raising the first question to kind of refining it to now, I think, sort of like following up on Geshe-la's response, it's this connection, or if there is a tension, the tension between universality and particularity. If we were to claim that, the Buddha Dharma is this all-encompassing, Pratitya Samutpada, it's this all-encompassing Dharma of the universe, then we are at the same time, not just claiming that there is a way based on the Lord Buddha's teaching, but there is a particular way based on my reading of Lord Buddha's teaching. And then how do we negotiate this? How do we negotiate this? And to me, that is exactly why we're having a panel like this. So that maybe, without using, too much of, I think, kind of battle or combat language, so that we can talk about this and figure this out within ourselves and among ourselves.
But we are doing.
So that then we will deal with another layer of diversity, right? Yeah.
Good point.
Um,
Maybe, yeah, Dr. Mattia, maybe, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I would like to respond a little bit because I'm the one who brought it up. So I feel that to some extent I should say a few words. Well, first of all, language, I think, is important. We have to be clear what we are talking about. Because when people say getting enlightened, this vague word, what are they referring to? I'm referring to becoming a Samyak Sambuddha, omniscience, complete Buddha. And I think, yes, it is necessary to go through a certain path. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. But to the best of my understanding, looks like that's the only way. Now, the question is liberation, already a little bit different question. So, for example, Pratyeka Buddhas. According to the Buddhist tradition, it is possible to gain liberation even without encountering the Buddha's teaching, but that happens only in specific times, which is when the teachings of one Buddha have already stopped being available and when the teachings of the next Buddha are not yet available. And why is it, one might wonder, that that happens only at that time? I think this has something to do also with dependent arising, causes and conditions, subtle causes and conditions. If somebody has enough merit to go through the type of training in meditation and wisdom that will result in liberation, if the teachings of a Buddha are available in the world at that time, that person will come in touch with those teachings. So this actually, we have to understand from this perspective. And regarding Shakyamuni Buddha, did he ever take refuge? Well, he didn't practice for just one lifetime. He didn't just take refuge. He even obtained a prediction of becoming a Buddha, and he himself says it in the sutras. So it is, according to the Buddhist teachings, as I understand it, it might well be wrong. Now, I would like to add something else, that we are talking of things which are very, very high. So this should be understood. So from the perspective of maybe most people, or I don't know, there are many people who might not even be Buddhist, and they have such qualities that to us might look like they are enlightened. If we want to use this word, I personally don't use it much, but maybe we will feel that way. But that is a different thing. What we are asking, if we are asking, like, who can become a Samyak Sambuddha, then the Buddha himself gave ample instructions. And in fact, one of the sutras, which is available in now in Sanskrit, luckily as well, and of course in Pali, is a very long explanation of why and which teachings are not going to result in liberation. I'm referring to the Brahmajala Sutta. In fact, if we take a certain organization of a Tipitaka, that happens to be even the first sutta. So that seems to be very important, and it has something to do with the word Sat. Because there's lots of dharmas. Which one is the Saddharma? This, of course, it is usually when we discuss in this way is something that we do among Buddhists, because if we say like this, it might sound like we are looking down on other people. So we have to always check the context and find a suitable context to mention this kind of thing, in my opinion. It's a matter also of not encouraging some kind of friction. So we have to be very careful in terms of context. But if you are asking a very straightforward question about my own understanding of the Buddhist teachings, etc., and you are not just asking, how can you become an amazing meditator who can stay 5 million years in meditation without breathing? I think anyone can do it. Doesn't have to be a Buddhist. No problem. How can you get enough compassion that you will be just happy if somebody cuts you to pieces and gives you as food for the dogs when you're helping somebody else? I think, yes, anyone can do it. No problem. No problem. Doesn't have to be Buddhist, doesn't even have to be religious. That's a different thing. And to us, those people might look even like, let's say, enlightened. But if we talk about becoming a perfect, complete Buddha, then I feel the question becomes more precise, and I feel I would give this kind of answer. I hope maybe I
Thank you.
So I think, yeah, thank you. So I think our discussion on Saddhamma, I think it's more than enough. So
But you haven't spoken much, Bhante.
Yeah,
What do you say
Bhante.
something about
Yeah.
that?
because I'm learning. Yeah. Anyway, I'm thinking, is there any possible that we switch to another topics, like since we are coming from the Sanskrit and Pali tradition, right? Instead of saying like Mahayana and Theravada, we are talking about like you are from the Sanskrit tradition, you are from the Pali tradition. So so my question is it important, say like for us in the 21st century to use or to communicate these two ancient languages like Pali and Sanskrit? Is it important, or we are just quite sufficiently satisfied with the translation?
All right. So who wanna answer this question first?
Looks like Christie and me are jobless tonight, actually.
Oh, this is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Dialogue.
It's a real interaction and dialogue between.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's what we
Geshe
want to see, actually.
already
Geshe-la.
raised his hand.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable, about Dharmapala. So when I heard the name of Dharmapala, so we refer to the Dharma protector.
Indeed.
Dharmapala. Yes, you are right. Actually, I will tell you my own opinion. So actually, when I have a Dharma class in Singapore, usually I said the best way we can say, oh, I study Buddhism in Thai language, Sri Lankan language, Chinese language, Tibetan language, Japanese language. We should not say, oh, Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, because we dividing ourselves in many different parts. In my life, for me, the first time I hear the term Pali and Sanskrit tradition, not Mahayana and Theravada, from the Dalai Lama. Generally, when we say Theravada and Mahayana, it looks like superior and kind of inferior. The word is not stable at this time. In the past, yes, we Thai, Sri Lankan, Tibet, China, we totally live isolatedly. We didn't have a close connection each other. Now we have come very close due to the economic, due to technology. So now it is so important we all must come together as a Buddhist. Buddhist, right? Therefore, there's a two reason to say Pali tradition and Sanskrit tradition. So according to Tibetan history, the first time when Buddha Shakyamuni delivered the teaching of a Four Noble Truth, so we Tibetan believe, so he taught the Four Noble Truth based on Pali language. The second, so when he explained, particularly the truth, the truth cessation of the truth, then there's one important question: can we achieve cessation or not? Is there a possibility or not to achieving cessation? So in order to convince to the disciple, the Buddha Shakyamuni explained emptiness, the shunyata, then he needed very important, precise language. And he gave a teaching about emptiness based on Sanskrit. Therefore, all the Buddhism in China, like Tibet, Mongolia, Japan, those actually you can see most of them translated from the Sanskrit language. The Buddhism in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, most of them translate directly from Pali, not much Sanskrit. So therefore, in order to bring all together without having any kind of discrimination, then therefore, His Holiness said, is the most important and very accurate to say Pali and Sanskrit like Buddhist tradition, not the Theravada and Mahayana.
Okay, I think it is quite clear that we are talking about the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition, you see. So now today we are talking about with the modern approach of what we call the methodology studies of learning these ancient languages. So we find that it is very important, right, to study these ancient languages so that the authentic teachings like Sutta Vinaya of the Buddhas can be preserved, right? So it means that now today with all this modern approach, we can translate all these texts, into modern texts. Of course, when you talk about the modern texts, they can never be satisfied at all. It's everyone will have, everyone will have their, the argument or their translation onto this. So, to my knowledge, I think the Pali and Sanskrit has to be is very important and has to be learned. And of course, when we are talking about the Pali and Sanskrit, of course, no doubt, Buddhas, right? In his early time, he prohibited his disciple to speak Sanskrit, right? I think, and the Buddha says that he allowed his disciple to be spoken in their own respective dialects. That is the Sakya Nirti we have earlier heard. So it seems that when the Buddha speak Pali, I think is very doubtful. But I think scholars have the opinions that the Magadhi language is a kind of vernacular language spoken by the Buddhas at that time. So now we talk about the Pali and Sanskrit. They are quite related languages. It means that when you compare the Pali with that of the classical Sanskrit, we find about like 2/3 of the vocabulary consists of the words, identical with the Pali. Like for example, like we talk about the Buddhas, Sanskrit also Buddhas. Of course, Sangha, like Naga or Devata. So I think it is very important to preserve the Pali and Sanskrit. And of course, our study of the Pali and Sanskrit can never be stopped, and we can never be satisfied with the translation. So I think when the scholars get together, you see, maybe it's quite good, right, that we can learn the Pali and Sanskrit. So the original teaching can be preserved. Sorry.
I think Dr. Mattia has something to respond to Bante's comment just now. Yeah. So Mattia, you need to unmute your... Yeah, sure.
Unmute? Oh,
yeah, okay. We can hear you now.
No.
Yep.
Yes, Bibek was laughing. He knows what I am going to say. Well, actually, I would like to point out that as far as I know, the Buddha never said in any sutta that you cannot put the teachings in Sanskrit. Never. The sutta that you're thinking of doesn't speak of Sanskrit. It uses the word chandaso. That word doesn't mean Sanskrit. It means Vedic Sanskrit, which is a slightly different language and is not very comprehensible. And even Buddhaghosa, when he comments on that, explains Chandaso means it refers to the Sanskrit as it is in the Veda. So it's a very precise injunction. It doesn't refer to Sanskrit in general. First. Second, Sakaya Nirutti, there is a very long debate about what it could really mean. Whether it refers to Magadha, and this seems to be the understanding of Buddhaghosa himself, and or whether it refers to you just do in your own language. But I would like to pick up from something that Geshe was mentioning, which is that the Buddha spoke the Four Noble Truths in Pali, and maybe rather, I think Geshe might have meant Magadha, because Usually in the Tibetan text, we refer to Magadha language rather than Pali. And whether it's same or different is a slightly difficult position. But that particular view, as far as I know, is very specific to one tradition, namely the Vimalaprabha commentary on the Kala Chakra Tantra, where it is explained that the Shravaka sutras were taught in Magadha language, while the Mahayana sutras were taught primarily in Sanskrit, and the Tantras were taught in Apabhramsha, Prakrit, and Sanskrit, or all three, and also in some what they call Mlecha Bhasha, such as Shabadi, etc. This is one tradition which is available, but there's actually other traditions. For example, according to some tradition, in the beginning there were 4 main Nikayas, and each of these Nikayas used a different language as the main canonical language. Some of them use Sanskrit, some of them use Prakrit, some use Apabhramsha, and I think as for the Stavira, they use the term Pishachi, if I remember correctly. So there's different traditions regarding what were the languages available in the beginning. That's my understanding. Although, of course, in the Tibetan tradition, the Kala Chakra tradition is very influential. And I just yesterday I received some discussion precisely about this point, which I thought was a good time. Regarding, I agree completely with Bhante Dharmapala that we have to retain knowledge of Sanskrit and Pali. First of all, because the available translations are not consistent. We have to remember that when translations were made in ancient times they were done much better by people who had an acquaintance with both the source language and the target language, which was much, much better. So, for example, now when we translate some verses from the original, these verses are a very precise meter, and we don't translate them in a way that they could be chanted. We don't translate them by using meter because we can't. Most English speakers nowadays are not trained in that way. So the type of text which we produce doesn't look very much like a sacred text. While if we look at the translations, definitely from Tibetan, and I believe in Chinese too, these are holy texts, and they were made with a lot of consistency. So that means they created a whole literature that could be used independently. This has not happened in English. It doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon because we do not have much agreement. And therefore, I think it is very important. Besides the fact that it's always good that at least some people know the original texts so that the translations can always be improved, revised, and double-checked. I'm not saying that everyone has to be an expert in the original languages, but there should be some people in the world who can do that. I think, and sorry, I'm being a little bit long. I would like to point out that in the Tibetan tradition, there's been many masters who make a huge effort to learn Sanskrit even after there were already lots of translations. For example, Sakya Pandita knew Sanskrit well, Rongzom Mahapandita knew Sanskrit well. At the time of Dolpopa, he commissioned new translations of Kala Chakra commentaries, if I'm not wrong. The fifth Dalai Lama, the great Dalai Lama, he actually learned how to compose Sanskrit verses. We still have his exercises in Sanskrit. And when the Rime started in Tibet, many of the Rime masters put a lot of emphasis on the study and teaching of Sanskrit grammar. Mipa Rinpoche wrote a dictionary. Kontrö Rinpoche, Jamgon Kontrö the Great, used to go and teach Ka Tantra everywhere. In fact, you could double check this, Geshe, but my late friend Lobsang Norbu Shastri told me that once he spoke with His Holiness, and His Holiness Dalai Lama himself studied Ka Tantra Vyakarana. He studied some Sanskrit grammar. So there is this tradition. And I think in the Chinese tradition too, there were some masters like Kuei-chi and also Yi-Tsing. Of course, Xuanzang was very well known for that, who made an effort, and also they warned that you should study more Sanskrit. They were Sanskrit centers of learning in East Asia, not only in what now is China, but also in Japan. So, and for the Pali tradition, this is one point that people sometimes underestimate, but without knowing Sanskrit, it's very difficult to read the Pali commentaries. Very difficult. That's why for a long time they kept a good tradition of Sanskrit learning. In Sri Lanka, many Theravada bhikkhus used to be able to speak some Sanskrit up to at least 20 years ago, and there were poets. Some bhikkhus were very good poets in Sanskrit. So this tradition has existed until relatively recently, and I think that it is point of contact between all the Buddhist traditions, which is very well worth trying to retain. Yeah, sorry, I've been a little long.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Mattia. And any of our guest speakers would like to add? You're smiling, Ven Rongdao.
Should I say something?
Oh, yes, Dr. Bibek.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mattia, for such a nice talk about Pali and Sanskrit. I think learning these languages, especially Pali and Sanskrit, is very important because there is a link between the worldview that the Buddhism embodies, and then the language it uses. There is a kind of symbiotic relationship between the language, how the language works, and the worldview it reveals, right? Let me give you an example. Just Dr. Mattia just mentioned about the enlightenment, and then I just picked it up. Nirvana is often translated as enlightenment, let's say. Now, when we look at the dhatu and the pratyas of nirvana, then the most common way to take it as nir and with the dhatu va, to blow out or something like that, in the sense that it is about blowing out the fires of raga, dvesha, moha, the attachment, three poisons, right? So we derive that meaning, and then we understand that, okay, nirvana, at least the Sravaka nirvana, is about extinguishing these three poisons, which is called asrava kshaya jnana, the destruction of all the asravas, the outflows. Now, when we examine this word enlightenment, it is a kind of a movement in the 18th century in Europe, which is far removed from India. And not only that, what it embodies is like this word enlightenment is contingent upon many other philosophical and other social political development in Europe, such as humanism, such as the importance of reason, such as scienticism, such as empiricism, such as anti-theosophy, such as anti-philosophy, religion, and so on and so forth. Actually, when we translate nirvana as an enlightenment, we are using a word that runs against the spirit of nirvana in certain way. This is a very banal example, extremely banal, I think. And so I was saying that since these Indian philosophies, especially Buddhism, we are talking about Buddhism, both Sanskrit and Pali tradition, the meaning is derived out of the dhatus and pratyaya. So there is one very famous verse from the Manjusri Mulakalpa. So dhatu pratyaya yogena sabdo dharmartha yojaka, right? So thanks to joining the dhatu and pratyaya, the root and the prefixes, a word effectuates the meaning of the dharma. So this is actually very meaningful. And Again, let me go to the stock phrases. When in the Nidana Katha, for example, it is often stated that the Buddha's dharma has swartham subhyanjana. It is not only with the proper meaning or auspicious meaning or whatever, but it also has a proper joining of dhatu and pratyay and the word formation is very important too. Not only the meaning but also the word. So if we do not know the basic functioning of the Indian languages, especially Pali and Sanskrit, how it functions, how the meaning is derived out of its dhatu and the pratyayas, perhaps we lose the essence of Buddhism. We do not understand properly the context of these words, these vocabularies, especially the important vocabularies. For example, pratitya samutpada. How do we understand this word pratitya samutpada? It is a very complex, actually, compound, and Vasubandhu explains it well in the third chapter of Abhidharma Kosha, and which actually runs against all the explanations we understand in the modern literature. Many of them, actually, they are not very correctly translated. So I think understanding this, just like Mattia said sometimes back, at least a basic understanding of how these languages function would help us to understand the worldview, the doctrinal positions of Buddhism much better than without knowing how it functions. So I think that is where I would like to end here, that it is very important to learn Sanskrit and Pali. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bibek. Bante, you have anything to add? No? Yeah, time is running up. I know. Yeah, this is wonderful. Such an auspicious way to spend this very auspicious first new full moon day of the year, according to the Tibetan calendar. We spent our first full moon day yesterday, according to the Chinese calendar. But anyway, it's really wonderful to have all our very venerable scholars here. Wonderful discussions, really. I'm sure that all the audience, like me, have learned a lot, so much to digest. So no worries. I think Brother Chang will make this link available on YouTube, so we can always go back and learn and, to absorb. And as a linguist myself, actually, I can, agree with you more upon the importance of preserving the languages and learning more languages, per se. And I think this is a very good start. We do have a second dialogue to come up on March the 2nd. So we will continue our discussions then. And for our audience here, some of you have asked some questions which are not directly related to the discussion, so we haven't had a chance to bring them up. But please don't worry, we'll try to, rope them in maybe the next time when it's possible. So please feel most welcome to visit the Sattva project website or our Facebook page. You can continue the discussions there as well. And now off to Brother Sherab, something more to remind everyone.
Yeah, dear Dhamma friends and fellow Sattva, please attend the International Buddhist Conference, which will be happening on the 5th and 6th March of 2021. The registration, you can scan the QR code here to register yourself, whether you are a Sixth Sangha or lay practitioner. You can attend these 2 days. Very meaningful and very important Buddhist conference where His Holiness Dalai Lama will be giving his inaugural speech at this conference. So that's all from us tonight from Sattva. Thank you, Geshe La. Thank you, Bante. Thank you, Ven Rongdao. Thank you, Bibek. And thank you, Dr. Mattia. Good night to everybody. And
thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, all speakers, and thank you, our audience, and Brother Chong, too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.